Hello, Conscious Investor, and welcome back. I'm your host, Julie Hawley. For over 4 years, I've paired my background in real estate investing, education, and coaching to create powerful content for you each week. This podcast is where we take a holistic approach to investing by focusing on 3 ingredients to a life of personal freedom: health, mindset, and wealth. We'll talk about everything from passive investing through syndication and how to use your retirement accounts to boost your investing, to mineral balancing and gut-brain health, and into topics that cultivate your inner strength and resilience so you can thrive regardless of any of life's current events. And yes, those are all episodes currently available and linked in the show notes below. Join me each Monday for a mindset episode and later in the week for an interview with expert investors and health professionals so that you can experience your greatest health, strongest mindset, and build the wisest wealth. Mike, I am absolutely thrilled to have you here on the Conscious Investor podcast.
First off, let me start by saying 500 episodes. Are you kidding me? That is massive. So congratulations to you. That's fantastic. It's huge. And so I love that. I love the fact that I can come on because I love your message. And I know having talked to you offline, I know how much you care about your audience. I know how much you care about people and about giving back. And so I just appreciate the fact that you feel that I'm worthy to share with your audience. And so thank you for having me on.
Oh my gosh, your message is a message that when we connected up and had lunch at boot camp, I knew in that moment, like, oh my gosh, Conscious Investor, you are going to deeply value and appreciate Mike's message. And you're going to go down to the show notes and you're going to see Mike has this like a massive pedigree behind him that you're just blown away by it. And what I love so much, Mike, is that when we met, sometimes you meet people and that's what they lead with. They lead with, I was a rock star quarterback and I am still hold records at Cal, and I have, and sometimes people who have achieved such great success as like you have, they lead with that, and it's almost a protective mechanism for them, for their life, for their and that's their identity. And one of the things that really resonated with me was just how grounded, how human you are, and how your message, it's not limited. It is an unlimited message, and your life has been braided together. And while I have a normal first question, I actually would like to ask a different question. And knowing you've had such a variety of experiences, but something that really struck me as we had lunch was your experience started when you were really young. Like, you have been, I think achiever isn't what the word I would say, an overcomer who became an achiever. Like, you started with odds stacked against you. And a lot of times, Conscious Investor, we can feel that way at different points in our life. We could feel that our marriage is not headed the direction we want it to go, or our career isn't, maybe our kids aren't, or maybe we don't have those things and it's other parts of our life and we feel stuck and we feel we have to overcome. You face that really early on. And I'm curious if you'd be willing to share that experience with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Because people look at, you're a professional football player, like you said, people identify you by your occupation or by your past successes. And obviously I have, my football jersey in the background for anybody watching on video, and I've got my football stuff in my room. But that's not who I am. That's not my identity. I am always a work in progress. I have been from day one. I'm still a work in progress right now. I don't have all the answers, but I found some of them that really help. And it stems back to when I was a kid. You mentioned it. I was actually born with cystic fibrosis, which is a severe form of lung disease. And you get more mucus. It makes it really hard to breathe. And in the time that I was growing up in the 70s, it was prognosis for somebody born with cystic fibrosis was really bad. The life expectancies were short, and kids were they were held back and they were held in. I was in an incubator right after birth, and so I was kind of struggling to breathe. The thing that most people take for granted, in that you can breathe and breath is life, I had to fight like hell for my entire life. And so from that moment through 13 years old, I was in the hospital every single year with lung disease. There was one time in particular, I talk about it in my book, where I was 7 years old or 6 years old, sitting in front of uh, the TV watching Wonder Woman. It was brand new. It was out, right? Linda Carter's playing Wonder Woman, and it was one of the first big DC comics after Batman. And I just had to watch it. But I had been sick all week long. I had what they diagnosed later as the croup or whooping cough. And I'm sitting in the lazy boy chair because I'm sick, right? I get away with murder. And I'm watching Wonder Woman, and every week she gets in trouble. She somehow gets fooled by the bad guys, and they trap her somehow. Well, in this one, she gets trapped inside a cave, and it has this plexiglass thing that comes down. And I'm sitting there watching the show, and I'm coughing occasionally. I sound like a barking seal as I'm coughing. But as I'm watching this, right, the plexiglass comes down, and the lava's coming down the sides, and I'm watching it, and all of a sudden I realize that my chest is tightening, and I can feel it literally, like she's being suffocated by this lava inside the box. I'm being suffocated by what's going on in my lungs. And it was so
Mm.
traumatic and so powerful for me that I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I can't breathe. And I literally couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't draw air. And it's one of those things that we just take so for granted. I just felt, if you've ever seen a fish when it flops out of the bowl, I felt like that fish sitting there trying to draw breath. And my parents snatched me up. They saw me, I was turning blue, and rushed me down to the emergency room again, for the 7th year in a row. And the doctors that night told my parents, if he makes it through the night, he'll probably be okay. Now, my mom was a World War II survivor from Germany. Her father was a medic in the German army. My dad was a member of the 82nd Airborne military. They met on base. And my dad was tough, but incredibly loving. My mom was a survivor. She survived the war. She lived in 7 different countries. She speaks a bunch of different languages. She was a refugee during the war. And so they decided they were going to do something about it. And the doctors told them while I was in there that sports might be a good thing for me because it would help strengthen my lung. Now, they had done the salt sweat test, which is what you test for cystic fibrosis, but it was inconclusive. They didn't know. They didn't have a certain diagnosis that it was cystic fibrosis. Doctor's like, well, we're not sure, but maybe sports will make his lungs stronger. And so they put me into sports, and it started with, soccer and baseball and swimming and everything that they could put me into. And as a kid, I started to learn that you could push through and you could fight pain, that pain didn't necessarily limit what you did. Because I wasn't necessarily thinking that I wanted to strengthen my lungs. I was thinking I wanted to stay the hell out of that hospital bed because it was scary. When they put me in that bed, I was sitting inside an oxygen tent. I was separated from my parents. I was separated from the world. And I was in a place of what they call dorsal vagal shutdown or freeze, where you have fight, flight, or freeze. It was in freeze, where I would literally disassociate inside that tent and try to remove myself from the picture. And I wanted to avoid that at all costs. And I knew that. And so I drove myself in sports. And when it would hurt, I would push through the next line. And I would just make that negotiation with myself. Okay, I'm going to do this next thing. I'm just going to run this sprint this time hard. I get to the end of that and I'd be like, okay. And then I'd say, okay, I can run the next one. One more. Let's do that. And I literally kind of got through the initial pieces of training my lungs, of improving, by doing one more over and over and over and over. And so initially I had to learn how to breathe, just to breathe as a kid. But in sports, I was learning how to breathe hard, which became a metaphor for me in terms of being able to push through things. Because so much, the human experience, as you know, Julie, we get scared of things, we get worried about things, and we start to shut down. And so at an early age, I learned that I could push through things with sports. And so that love of getting better, of pushing through, of overcoming was ingrained in me early. I tell people now, I was really fortunate that I was born with cystic fibrosis because it gave me that strength. It gave me that experience to push through things. And I think that's one of the messages that I teach people that I talk about in my book is that if you can look at these experiences as opportunities, as a benefit, it changes everything about them. They suck for sure, but there's a benefit to it. And if you can find that benefit, it's a superpower and it's a wonderful thing.
Gosh, when we were talking, I remember we're like, building our lunch at at this event, and you said something about CF, and I'm like, you know, you shouldn't have lived past teenage, early 20s at best at that point with where medicine was with CF. I remember as a child watching a video, like one of those. It wasn't a Hallmark movie, but it was something along those lines, and it was about this girl, Alexis, and she had CF, and I remember the awareness of it was even coming on. What's standing out to me right now that's really fascinating, Mike, is that not only did you learn to work through and push your own limits, and that you and I talk a lot about life is driven from the inside out,
Yeah.
like you develop that internal resilience so early on. But now I'm realizing, as we were talking about identity and how you don't have your identity as I'm amazing, um, a football player. Sorry, I'm thinking about all the awards that you've won and accomplishments you've have just clouded my mind for a moment. I'm like, gosh, how do you even like qualify? Like you're so amazing. So all that to say, you don't find your identity as oh well, I'm a rock star quarterback. I wonder if that has a taproot in, well, my identity isn't that I'm a CF overcomer. So some
It,
people
well,
can find their identity in different facets.
so your identity comes from every aspect of your life. And it's
Mm,
when you get into a fixed identity that you find problems, right?
there we go.
I am a football player eliminates all the other things that you can be. And so for me, part of my identity was I was that sick kid in the bed inside the tent that was running from my disease for sure, right? I had a demon chasing me, and that was part of it. Um, Part of it was that I also wanted to be an achiever. I wanted to be, I wanted to not have to worry about these things anymore. I had a conversation with my dad. Everywhere I've played, and I hate talking about myself in huge part, but I realize that this is what podcasts are about, right? But
Yeah, this is what
but
this is about.
the lessons are in the stories. And so when I was 8 years
Absolutely.
old, I had just won my first championship. I played on the member of the Racers, the Yorba Little League T-ball, and I was the team's leading home run hitter that year, right? And I was in that league at that age, right? The little guy on the mound is the one who kind of controls everything because you get most of the ground balls, you handle that. So I was the pitcher, but um, we had just won, and my dad had me in his car. He had this boxy blue Toyota SR5 stick shift, right? He was always a stick shift guy. And we're sitting there and we're going to Pioneer Chicken because I wanted fried chicken. That was my jam. We won. I got to choose. Like, we're going to Pioneer Chicken. And so he said, "So what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I told him, I said, "Oh, I'm just going to be a pro baseball player." Like, that was just going to happen. That's what I was going to do. And, my dad, being wonderful, looks at me and goes, "Okay, well, cool. If that doesn't happen, what do you want to be?" And I'd literally just seen a fishing show that morning. It was Orlando Wilson, one of the great all-time fishing hosts, bass guy, who was hammering huge bass down on Lake Okeechobee, throwing these shiners which is a bait fish the size of my hand, and they were just catching these monster largemouth bass. And one of the things that my dad and I always did together was fish. I'm like, "Oh, I'll just host a fishing show," and he's like, "Oh, okay, great. That's neat that you want to do those things, but super. Let's just go get chicken," right? So we go and get chicken. Well, fast forward, and I play football, baseball, basketball, all the sports, but I center up in high school on football and baseball. Um, I was the top-rated catcher for the Royals coming out of high school in Orange County. Coming out, they sent out the whole scouting thing. They had me at a tryout, But I wanted to play football. And so I got a scholarship to Cal. And they bring me on uh, as a quarterback. I learned the game. I was pretty bad when I got there. I got to be honest with you. I wasn't great. I came from a wing T offense that didn't teach me the finer points of playing. I love my high school football coach, John Turek, fantastic dude, taught me a ton of life lessons. But the football was antiquated. And so when I got to the college level, I had to learn how to play football all over again. And so I did that. But then I started to excel and I started to see this is really the sport that I love. I love
Mm.
football, the combat, it gave me that gladiator's armor. I felt like, I went from being scared of getting sick and having lung disease to throwing on pads and saying, "Oh yeah, watch this cystic fibrosis, right? Watch this pneumonia. You can't. I'm going to go out there and throw my body in the fray." Like I was maybe overcompensating with sports, but it was a passion for me. I loved it, and the entire time, because of my history as a sick kid, I was really interoceptive. I understood my internal what was going on. I could feel it. I could sense it and I could
Yeah.
I had a sense of how to regulate myself a little bit, and so I learned that. But I went and played football to kind of finish off the story I started with. Went and played football, got drafted in the NFL, played 11 years of pro football, and then as soon as I got done playing football, I started producing my own outdoor TV show because while I was playing football, I knew that I wanted to go be an outdoor producer. So I started learning how to be on camera, how to do radio, how to speak in front of a camera, how to speak in front of a mic, how to edit, how to produce segments of television. And I started doing it in sports because that was a natural in for me. Our broadcast, who's a broadcasting legend, Joe Starkey, one of my favorite people of all time, asked me to come back and be a sideline reporter for the Cal games because the Arena League was in the spring and college football was in the fall. So I came back and started doing that. I started at the lowest rung of the ladder and worked my way up. And I knew it. I had to go over and pick up my own mic for games, and I had to, make all the connections. And they didn't travel me to away games the first year. Like there's a whole bunch of like slings and arrows that I had to get through. But I knew what I wanted to be. I knew what I wanted to do. And so I learned the business. And then as soon as I got done playing football, I called up Outdoor Channel and said, "You need me. I'm on camera. I'm an ex-pro. I'm a producer. I was a guide in the off season while I was playing football. So I would guide fly fishing in Northern California. I'm like, I'm a perfect fit for you." And so they said, "Well, let's do a joint venture." And we did. And the first show was phenomenal. Caught 8 steelhead on the Klamath River. Had one of them wrap me around the anchor line. I'm passing my rod underneath the boat and doing all kinds of funky stuff. I talked about the hatchery, talked about the history, talked about the biology. Like we got it all in 22 and a half minutes. And so it was a really good show. They got the tape that same day. They signed me to a contract for a year's worth of production, which led to 20 years worth of production. And I was sitting with my dad. My son was just born. I'm carrying him around, brand new baby boy, 11 days old. And my dad looks at me. He goes, "Holy crap, you did it!" I'm like, "Huh?" And he said, "Well, you told me in the car. Remember that day after you won the championship that you wanted to be a pro baseball player and you wanted to host your own TV show, your own fly fishing or your own fishing show." He goes, "You remember that?" I go, "Yeah, I do kind of remember that story." He goes, "You freaking did it!" Like, and that pride from my dad, like that connection, which is another part that I really learned along the way, with part of the leadership piece. It's so important. That
Mm.
connection from my dad was so powerful for me. Like it meant so much to me to see my dad beam and to have that pride from him and that acceptance, and for him to be in that moment with me completely content and proud. And like that just meant so much to me, right? And that's why I love team sports, because you get that connection as well. But coming from this is what I'm going to do when I'm 8 to closing the loop and finishing it off, was a huge piece, and it was just understanding myself and being driven to do something without being denied along the way.
It's it's just so powerful, and I love that you are even transcending, like, you're going into a whole another venue, right? So here you are overcoming as a child, cystic fibrosis. You manifest becoming a professional athlete and, having your own show. And now here you are coming out with this amazing book, Everyday Great, and so much more with that. What's interesting to me is that when someone is choosing to write a book and you have chosen to write it, there's no shame. Some people choose to hire a ghostwriter and have somebody else do the work, but there's internal work that takes place when we choose to engage the writing on our own, and it's painful.
Amen.
And
Holy
so
crap, is that the truth? For anybody who has not written a book, there is so much that I'll let you, but that boy, you just struck me right in the limbic system right there. You absolutely go through personal work while you're writing.
it is an internal work, and to me, that's an extension of the arc, one of the many arcs in your life of overcoming, and to say, I'm going to become that, put on that gladiator suit of sorts, and I am going to go through the internal work necessary to produce and create this book so that I can, impact and support people very deliberately. And I'm so excited about that book. I am curious. So I'm going to ask a couple questions because I know you can handle this. I could ask 20 at once and you'd be fine. But
I don't know
I'm
about 20,
curious.
but I could handle two.
Okay, a couple questions that go with this. Why did you choose to write this on your own instead of you're equipped? You could find a really great ghostwriter, but you've chosen to write this on your own. And what is it you really want what's the outcome you really want for people from Everyday Great?
Those are both fantastic questions, by the way. So the reason I chose to write it on my own is the exact point that you were talking about, in that these are my stories. And I have learned my entire life that in order to really suck the marrow out of what you're doing, you need to fully immerse in what you are doing. I am a reverse engineer guy from the nuts and bolts. I love being able to take a problem, to grab it, to be able to dismantle it, kind of rethink it, reframe it, and then reassemble it into a position that makes sense and works for people. And I have always been that guy. I love that. I'm a coach by nature. My dad, so I don't give my mom enough credit. Let me say this. My mom was the most loving, devoted, like mama bear ever. I love that lady to death. She's amazing. But I always talk about my dad, and it's because my dad, they both gave me acceptance, but my dad gave me the acceptance and the push at the same time.
Mm.
And he was a phenomenal coach. Like, he was an amazing coach. He got voted Citizen of the Year in our town twice. Most people
Wow.
like are lucky to get it once, and we weren't. It wasn't like it was a podunk town. Uh, I grew up in Yorba Linda, which is the hometown of Richard Nixon, in Orange County, and so it's big. His library's there. It's a pretty big town,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
my dad got voted Citizen of the Year twice. That's what kind of good dude my dad was, and so
Oh.
I was really fortunate to have that type of role model, and he taught me that you do the work, right? You get through, you engage, and you connect. And I told the
Mm.
story. My dad connecting with my father was so powerful, and that's why being in teams is so powerful for me. I wanted to connect, and so to
Mhm.
come full circle on question number one, why not a ghostwriter? Because I wanted to connect with my reader.
Mm.
I wanted to connect with people. These are my stories.
Yeah.
They're my lessons. They're my experiences, and I wanted that to come through. And as much as you can love a ghostwriter, I've read a bunch, and I've got buddies who do it. I know a guy who's really, really good at the sports field. He's a friend, but I wanted to write this book myself. Will I do it again? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But this one, I wanted it to be for me because I want to be a coach. I want to connect with people, and I want them to feel these lessons. We all know when you pick up that book that the author, you can feel their intent coming through the written word, through the page. And that's what
Yeah.
I wanted to happen with this book because it's powerful, right? These are the lessons. I reverse engineer the human experience for people. I am outside of being an athlete. I went to Cal too. So I always joke like there's athletes and then there's guys who really study, who really do the work, who get it. And to survive at Cal, you have to have some ability in terms of cognitive skills. And so um,
I'll say it,
I
you're smart, Mike.
well, I
You're
appreciate
really
that. I'm
okay.
trying to humble brag here. So but you have to get through it. And so I love breaking it down, and I want to bring that to people. That's the answer number one. I want them to feel that. I've literally with my
Yeah.
system, I connect at your at the level of your nervous system if people
Mhm.
get these lessons, if they get the clues. And once you understand that, once you get that raw base feeling and base understanding of what's going on inside your body, it changes your entire dynamic and
Mhm.
and your ability to overcome things in your life become easy. That's what God put me here for. That's what God gave me cystic fibrosis for. That's what God gave me my parents for, and taught, gave me professional football and getting cut 5 times playing professional football. And all those lessons were so that I could
Yeah.
bring it to people in this book. And so that's why I'm writing it myself, because I want it to come from me to them. As a coach, that's what I do. Secondly, I want people to be able to take this information and then use it in their lives to transform the way that they see, to transform perception of what's going on in the world. We get so locked up in the feelings of the moment. They're called somatic senses, the things that you feel.
Mhm.
Stephen Porges calls it neuroception. It's about your nervous system always monitoring, always deciding what's a threat and what isn't a threat. And so nowadays, we don't we're not facing daily threats. We're not in the midst of predation. We don't have things going on where a test is not a T-Rex, right? a,
Yeah.
a, a bad boss is not a bear. We're not
Mm.
facing that, but our nervous system doesn't know the difference. And when we feel threatened, our nervous system reacts and the limbic system kicks in and we start getting all these feelings, all these somatic senses. And your body's trying to get to what's called homeostasis. It's trying to get to a place where you can thrive. And it also wants to protect you from danger. So if you feel something is danger, then you react with your nervous system. Well, there's so much stimulus to us now. Even Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and all these other things can become threats to our limbic system. And so what we have to do is learn how to regulate that. And the first and foremost piece of it is to understand what it is, right? And so I go into the
Mhm.
science of it because I got the equivalent of a PhD or master's degree in this stuff. I have a phenomenal friend, Dr. Cio Hernandez, who we haven't even gotten into the anxiety piece of this thing yet, but which was really the cue for me. But she is brilliant to the umpteenth degree, and she has taught. She has helped me to really find the threads to pull on that I can relate my lessons as an athlete, as a producer, as an on-camera talent, as a human being back to people at home. And so I want the outcome for them to understand what it is that they're feeling, to have the perception that they can control all of that they are in control, and that they can make the decisions and the changes in their life that they need to thrive, whatever that looks like for
Yeah.
them. Because I can't tell anybody what their idea of thriving is, but I can tell them that they have the potential and the power to thrive.
Gosh, Mike, and conscious investor, I'm sure you can see exactly why I invited Mike on the show, because this is something we talk about so often. And I know you can talk about it in so much more depth because of your research, and the time you've poured in to learn about it. But it's like that knee jerk reaction that we have to the world around us. It's so unnecessary. And I love, like, we talk about this, like, a bad boss is not a bear. Like, we don't have the same issues ancestrally speaking. And I love going into cultural anthropology. It's like these are not the same issues, but yes, like just to double tap on that point of yeah, we're responding to that angry person over on social media who posts whatever with that same level of intensity, and it's so just such a disservice to our lives. I'm curious if you can share with us, what one of the elements of overcoming, of working through that is, if we can give that conscious investor some support to say, and this is conscious investor, you're going to need to buy the book. You have to go pick up a copy of the book so that you can get the full scope and sequence here. I mean, I'm asking Mike a very high level question, and basically it's jumping the gun on a lot of information that will be in the book. So you're going to want to go and make sure you get the book. But what do we do? Let's just say we have that, because this is such a common thing for people. Some people choose to get off of social media, and instead of learning how to regulate, it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to eliminate XYZ from my life. We're going to pick on social media because that's a common one. Well, I'm just not going to be on social media because when I'm on it, I get triggered. That's a common phrase people use. It triggers me. And really, what they're saying is, I see something on that social media platform and it aggravates my somatic system, and I have this visceral response, and I don't like that. I don't want that in my life. But how can we actually, what are some of the high level, how can we regulate that so that we can be present?
Right. So I love the question. It shows how deep and thoughtful you are about the topic, right? And this is what I talk about when I talk about how much you care about your audience and how much you give back. Like, you can just hear it in the way that you frame the question, the things that you think about for them. And so it's such a powerful gift to give to them. And I appreciate you for that. In answer, let me give you a long answer, because as you know, that's what
Yeah.
I do. We've heard it, right? So I played football. I played professional football for 11 years. This is the like, it's what I did. It's part of who I am. It's part of my identity. And I learned how to regulate myself in that regard. Players always feel fear in the tunnel. You can't
Mhm.
play at that level and not feel the stress response. And so you learn to deal with it. You learn to push through it. When I was a junior going into my junior year at Cal, there was a team psychologist named Dr. Bill Koish. And I love Bill. Fantastic dude. But he's this mousy little dude who's out of New York, and he's got the New York accent, and he talks like this, and he's really fast, and he does the whole New York thing. And they brought us in, and sports psychology wasn't even a thing at the time. And he had three of us in there, and we were all like, oh, what are we doing here? Like, I don't want to be here, looking at our watches, kind of thinking about the time. And we talked through it, and it was like a group therapy session. And back then, crazy people went to therapy. That's what it was. And, like, I thought adults were supposed to have all the answers, and here he was asking all the questions. And so I'm like, well, whatever. I'm about done with this, and just kind of tuning out. And at the end of the conversation, I get more depth in this in the book. But he says, so anybody have any questions? And I look at him, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm here. Let's try not to make it a complete waste. And I look at him, I said, I yawn before games. It drives me crazy. Like, it makes me feel soft, like I'm not ready, and it frustrates the hell out of me. How do I stop yawning? Right? So here I'm asking this question to him, and he goes, "Oh, that's your fight or flight response." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, your fight or flight response. Like, you see a T-Rex, and all of a sudden you need to run, so your body needs more oxygen, and so what you're doing is you're yawning, you're getting air in, you're getting oxygen. It's totally natural." I'm like, whoa, wait. So the fact that I'm yawning is natural? He goes, "Oh yeah, it means your body's getting ready. It's like you're getting more adrenaline, you're getting more of this stuff. It's all coming in, like, and your body's getting ready to do exactly what you're about to do. You're gonna go play football. Like, it's getting you ready to play football." I'm like, holy crap! like mind blown. It just changed my entire perspective. Like I call them my creepy feelies. When you start to get that stress response and you feel the creepy feelies that come with it, right? Your skin gets the
Right.
prickles on it, and the breath gets shallow, and you feel your heartbeat in your ears, and your face gets flushed, and your palms get sweaty, and all those things that happen. That's a stress response in your body, your acute stress response. And what's happening is hormones are going into your body. You're getting adrenaline, or known as epinephrine, in your brain. You're getting cortisol. So the cortisol is pumping glucose into your blood so that you have more energy, right? The adrenaline is dilating your veins so that you can respond better, so that you have more energy. Like all of this is geared to make you more responsive. It is literally performance enhancing drugs, and your body is juicing you with it in the moment.
Right.
And I'm like, holy crap. And so now I don't have to be nervous. Well, come 20 years later, Dr. Allie Crum, she's a Stanford psychologist, comes up and gives a TEDx talk about the stress is enhancing mindset. And when you understand that stress
Mm.
enhances you, enhances performance, enhances cognition, if you can get through the somatic senses, it changes your physiology so that you can perform. And so when we feel that stress response, this is what I talk about. I like to come under everything. What is the base? Where is the beginning of this? How
Mm.
do I change this at the source to affect my
Yes.
nervous system? And when I understand that stress enhances me, that stress is enhancing mindset, helps me change my physiology to be better. In the
Mm.
end, that's my goal. I want people to be better. I want to be better. I want to be able to affect people better. And so in my book, I go into the ways to use your acute stress response, or the ways to use physical things, doing the work, making a decision, all the things that you have to do in your life in order to modulate that stress response, to optimize performance so that you can become the best version of yourself.
I I love this so much, Mike. And what's interesting is that although we have a lot of experience in conscious investor, you and I have a lot of stressful experiences in our lives. There's another level of stressful experience when you're, on the line, and this is going to be me trying to make a really, really good football analogy here, but you have a stadium packed with, thousands of people. You've got millions of viewers online. You have all of this pressure, like, and you did this not just, I mean, you played professionally for 11 years, but you were at Cal. You had, it's decades long of engaging on that level with that pressure, but then in so many other parts of life. And so I can't think of somebody more qualified to be able to say, I've lived with this, I've learned how to work with this, I've learned how to leverage it, and now I know the science behind it. And now I can support you in really making every day great. I
And
love
that,
it.
yeah, and that's the point. So to get to that point, and here's what tied it all together for me. And I appreciate the fact that you asked the question in that way, because this is really, this is the life changing moment for me. Not that they all aren't. Every moment in your life is life changing. But when I got done playing football, right? So I'd won the world championships. I've got the ring. I had great teams around me. There's a great story in the book. At one point in my career, I finally realized that I wasn't playing for the ring, right? You always drive, you think you're playing for the championship, you think you're playing for that. I realized I wasn't playing for the ring, and it was amazing. But you're going to have to buy the book for that one. But that said, the injuries from football, the
Mm.
kind of repeated trauma to my body, meant I had 29 surgeries or procedures, injections in my spine, full spinal surgeries. I have 4 replacement discs in my neck. I've got knee replacements, so all this thing. And I say that I would do it all again in a second. So I have 0 regrets about playing. But it took its toll on my body. And at the time, with health insurance, pre-existing injuries were a disqualifier. Couldn't get health insurance. Which, from
Oh
a
my
business
gosh.
standpoint, I totally understand that, right?
Right.
And I had no more health insurance because I wasn't playing anymore. And so I couldn't get health insurance. The doctors, and I was paying for my own stuff out of pocket as it went, but the doctors were prescribing me meds in the form of anti-inflammatories and pain meds for my injuries. And although I hated the pain meds, when stuff was bad, I had to take them. Well, it gave me diverticulitis. The combination of the two gave me diverticulitis, a severe infection in your intestine. It was really bad. And it got to the point where it was ongoing for 2 years. And they kept trying to hammer me with antibiotics, so they're killing all my gut bacteria. And then it would stop it for the duration of the antibiotic, and then it would come back. And then it would stop it again, and it would come back. It probably went on 10 cycles of antibiotics during that period of time. And the doctors wouldn't do a surgery to fix it because the insurance company wouldn't cover it. And workers' comp said they weren't going to cover it, and I couldn't get health insurance. Like, it was horrible. And so it got so bad to the point, and my doctor, who was my doctor for the diverticulitis side, said, this is clearly related to the meds that you're taking for football. This is clearly a workers' comp thing, right? But they could deny everything here and just put you in court forever. And so I literally had to threaten them to go to court I would do a documentary. And I rounded up 20 football players who were all being denied by the same insurance company. And I said, I'm going to do a documentary with all these guys who are being denied by you. And if I die, it becomes more powerful, because that's how close I was. The doctor told me I was really close. I was septic. My body was bad. It was horrible. So finally, I sent it. I got it to their board of directors, and miraculously, the surgery was approved. Well, I got the surgery, recovered from that, and as post-traumatic stress does, it affected me. And as soon as I recovered in that healing phase, the PTSD kicked in for me, and I got the worst anxiety, to the point where I literally thought I was having a stroke sitting down editing one of my documentaries. And I had a panic attack, which led to other panic attacks, which led to anxiety, because the inability to overcome that for so long put me in that same position that I was in as a kid, in the hospital bed, in the oxygen tent, where I was in that dorsal vagal shutdown. And so I froze. And that's really what anxiety and depression are about. And it's the misregulation or dysregulation of your nervous system, in that you go into that edge of that fight or fight or flight, but you really get into freeze. It's what Marty Seligman called learned helplessness. And so you get to that place where you feel like you have zero control. And so my anxiety was bad. And here's a guy who won world championships. Here's a guy who could broadcast. I worked for NBC. I worked for Fox. I worked on national broadcasts all the time. I was doing pro games, college games. I have zero fear of getting on the air and talking. I have zero fear of standing up in front of a crowd and talking. I was scared to leave my house. I got agoraphobic because my anxiety was so bad. And I went through this off and on for 10 years. It would get a little bit better, and then it would get worse. But it was always that specter in the back of my mind. I could always feel that dysregulation in my nervous system. And so move forward, feeling pretty good for about 10 years. I got a divorce. My dad died. So there's a bunch of stuff that kind of fell on top of it inside of that created that anxiety. But I'm remarried, have an amazing, amazing wife now. And it's got, have my house, career set, everything's good. I coach quarterbacks as part of what I do because I love giving back. I love teaching the game to young players and watching their confidence grow, teaching them the lessons. And it's a Bluebird day. I have one of my favorite quarterbacks. And my anxiety is through the roof. I don't have bills that aren't paid. I don't have obligations that I can't fulfill. I don't have anything to trigger this. And my anxiety is so bad. I'm white knuckling it through a quarterback session. And so I call up my friend, Dr. CO, who I talked about a little bit. And we've known each other since college. She was 19 when I met her. And we have been really good friends. She's best friends with my wife. She's amazing. And I said, CO, you have to fix me. I am broken. Like, I am broken. And she goes, yeah, go ahead.
I know that you can handle this. I can't do this with all guests, but I want to know what that felt like in that moment to be at such a point where you understood and recognized I'm at this point and reaching out for help. Like, how did that feel reaching out to this lifelong friend, like rock bottom? Like,
Well, yeah. So I was so frustrated because I got to the point where I thought I would have it handled. Okay, it's good. It's good enough, right? Which I think is a place that we tend to stick ourselves oftentimes. It's good enough.
yep, yeah,
It's good enough. I can get by. I can manage this, right? And so we
yeah,
think of managing things all the time. And it was, pardon the language, a fuck it moment where
yeah,
I was like, I am over this crap. I don't want to do this anymore. And so it was really kind of a fork in the road for me. I had had, I was never going to commit suicide, but with this thing, I had had suicidal ideation. Like it flashed in my mind. Not that, and that's in the book too. You can't control your thoughts, right? Shit happens.
hmm
It flashes out there. You look for escape. You look for a way out.
yeah,
So it was never going to. I was going to white knuckle it through the rest of my life if I had to, but I wanted it to change. Like I needed it to change. And so I finally said, I have tried everything else, and I've always been a guy who tries everything. I know that there is always an answer. There is always a solution somewhere. You cannot let circumstances talk you out of finding it.
mhm,
And so I didn't cross that line with CO because she is a friend. She is a dear friend. And I didn't want to put on her in terms of her professional capacity. She is amazing. She is so generous and so giving that I knew that she would do it in a second. Um, but so that said, I called her up and I said, you need to fix me. I'm broken. And she said, come in right now. So as soon as I got done
mhm,
with that lesson, I literally ran down to her office and I told her what was going on. I told her how long it had been going on. And, this has been 10 years at this point of this stuff. And
wow,
she said, all right, well, let's do this. I'm like, okay, let's do this. So she sits me down on her couch and she puts me through a session of EMDR. Now, she's one of the instructors for EMDR on a national level. She's brilliant,
wow,
brilliant. And her understanding of that combined with her familiarity with me, right? We'd known each other for a long time. So she knew a lot of my
right,
stories. She was able to literally walk me down the rabbit hole, step by step by step, all the way back to that little baby in the oxygen tent who was scared to death that he was going to die. And she got me to that point. And EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reappraisal, I think is what it is. So the eye movement left and right inhibits the amygdala, which fires your nervous system. The desensitization, you go back to the trauma, whatever that trauma is. And then reappraisal, you change the way you look at
mhm,
it. And when she did that, I had, my little baby self in my arms, right? She's like, tell that baby, it's going to be okay. I'm like, and not only is it going to be okay, look what we did. Like, it's not just going to be okay. You became a quarterback and a gladiator and world champion and TV. Like, look at it's not just going to be okay. There's nothing to be scared of, but look at what you accomplished. And then along the way, we picked up my dad because losing him, I never dealt with it. I never addressed it.
oh,
I
wow,
never dealt with that stress. And he was my dude. Like, he was my guy. And so having those two things, um, and putting them both together, it almost makes me want to cry right now. I gotta be honest with you. So I can feel it.
yeah,
But having those two things together just changed me in an instant, and anxiety was gone, and I could feel joy again, and I could feel which I hadn't felt in 10 years. And in that moment, right there, I knew it's the nervous system. It is the freaking nervous system. That's what is making this happen. And I just, I had to bring it. I had to understand it. I had to study it. I had to find it. And that is what I want to bring to people, is that understanding, is that we can change things in an instant. You don't have to suffer any of this stuff. You don't have to feel the fear and the stress and all of that, because it's within the nervous system. And so my book gives them the tools to be able to affect their limbic system, to take control over their emotions, to control their homeostasis, to decide what thriving is.
Mm.
And that's the power that I want to give people.
Mike, I love, and I'm a firm believer in, it doesn't take years of therapy and years and decades of
Right?
doing a lot of internal work to create change. Like I'm a living example of my own of creating, like, oh, nope, I understand. Boom, done. Let's move on. Like,
Right.
life is so beautiful. And if when you have that level of experience, it's a game changer. And so I love that your book Everyday Great is going to really support people and being able to access that so themselves in the comfort of their homes, in their earbuds as they are walking about, just like living their best life and really stepping into thriving. Not just, I'm with you. I never settle for good ever. Good is not great, and we only do great. Like, I just don't believe in settling in life. Like, we were not intended to settle. We were created and hardwired with our own unique DNA to do something extraordinary,
Yeah, to
and we
thrive,
can't
right?
allow.
That's our human nature, and I don't mean to cut you
Yeah,
off, but that's the point of it. And that's really the point of the
yeah,
title. Everyday great is
yeah.
a double entendre. I love double entendres. It's crazy. I have a whole system in there. That's my system is a double entendre. But it's everyday great means I'm living everyday great. I'm doing the right things every day, because my system, part of what I teach is that literally whatever you do in life, you are training. You are
Mm,
constantly training yourself. You're training your nervous system how to respond, how to perceive, how to accept, and how to proceed in life. And so every day there has to be intentionality about living great, living your best life, not in a hip hop, TikTok, woohoo, live your best life way, in a intentionality about the things that we do and the understanding of what that does to our nervous system. But
mm.
it's also about being an everyday great, because you now become every day is great for you because of the intentionality you put into the little things in your life.
I love this. I appreciate. I'm so deeply grateful that you've walked the path of your life. And and even when you were talking about all of the surgeries, and I know you showed me a picture of, the arthritis in your neck, and I'm like,
Yeah.
golly, like, do you even have a spine in there? Is this just all arthritis? Like, what's going on? Like, you've earned you've earned the right to be able to speak and talk on this, and that's because of living everyday great, even through a decade of struggle and hardship through anxiety, because you were willing to walk through and to, as you put it, you can't let circumstances talk you out of solutions. And your commitment to say, I'm finding the solution. I'm going to do that. But not only am I going to find the solution for me, I'm going to find the solution for you. Just like you were working with, what, insurance company, if you're not going to pay for this, I'm going to support myself and these other players. Like, this isn't, and I deeply appreciate how your life is not just singular. It's, I'm going to win this for me, but when I win, everybody around me is going to win. Like, that's such a powerful way to live and lead, and I'm deeply grateful for that.
Thank you. That's one of the most powerful things. The final chapter in my book is the power of connection, and so I
Mm,
appreciate the fact that you point that out, because for me, helping you win, right? Helping my teammate win, having shared purpose with people is quintessentially human. It's what
mm,
we do when we are at our best. It is helping each
mhm.
other thrive, because that brings us to a point of safety. right? My amazing wife does that for me. I try to do that for her. Dr. CEO did that for me. I try to do that for her. I'm supporting her. She's got an incredible app that's coming out, that is helping people everywhere. She's amazing. Called the Got This app. She's incredible. But being able to support somebody and watch their fulfillment, watching them thrive, empowers you in such a way, and that's why I love team sports. That's why I love football. But I appreciate that you mentioned that because it really is a powerful lesson.
It's so powerful. Mike, I know, like, I appreciate you and your time. I could speak with you, and I have so many more questions just because I love humans and connecting and stories that we are gifted with throughout our journeys. But I know that we do need to wrap things up. I'm curious, what is the best way? I know conscious investor, you are drawn in just as I'm drawn in, and you're like, I don't want this to end. So, one, you definitely want to go pick up Everyday Great. That's a thing, right? Definitely
It'll be
go do that
October,
now.
right? It'll be October. It's coming out during football season, of course.
So we're going to do that. Okay. We'll send you, where can they, is there a landing page that they can make sure they're on it? Like, where can we send the conscious investor so that they can stay connected with you and everything you're up to, and, stay up to date with, I'm ordering Everyday Great today.
You can find me on LinkedIn. So find me there. You will get a lot of my messages, a lot of my content. If you do not on LinkedIn, which some people aren't, you can find me on Facebook. Those two places. There will be a landing page here shortly. I'm not a great tech guy. I'm a creative, so it will be here shortly. For the book, they can go pre-order all of that stuff. But right now, find me on LinkedIn or Facebook, and you'll get a lot of what I'm doing in terms of content, in terms of training, pieces of the book, podcast stuff for me as well. And you can find me there.
Love it. And conscious investor, make sure you go and connect on those platforms. If you're on both of them, connect everywhere. That's a way of supporting. It's a way of saying, wow, I gained so much from listening to your story, and I want to support you, and I want to continue to learn more and stay engaged, because this isn't, you can see Mike isn't just a one, oh, here's the moment in time. This has been a lifetime, which means that we still have years to come of just learning and growing together and having that connection and community. Mike, thank you so much for everything that you've created throughout your life, and for writing this book, and for sharing your time with myself and the conscious investor.
Thank you so much for having me on. Like I knew it was going to be great going in just for the moment that we shared, back in Dallas. But seeing how much you care about your audience, really, and your success and what you do for people, there's just such synergy there, and I appreciate that. I can feel that from you. I know your audience feels it from you, and so the fact that you would share me with your audience again is just it's an honor to me to be here. So I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, it's such a privilege. Now, conscious investor, remember, there is a way that you can support the show organically, and that is the best way for anything in life to grow. And so, if you have gained from this episode in any capacity, please take a moment. It takes, 30 seconds, and share this with a friend. There's so much content in here that is going to support you. And I know that you and I know friends and friends of friends who are struggling, who are dealing with anxiety, who are feeling overwhelmed, who are dysregulated. And this conversation is one of those linchpins that is a free way of providing support to someone. And that's a way of connecting, right? It's a free way to say, I see you and I want to support you. And I just love that we have so many resources available that don't cost us anything, but it's our care of attention and time to follow through. 30 seconds at most to share an episode. And if you'd like to just support a little bit further, take a moment, a little extra moment over on Apple Podcasts, scroll on down to the bottom, and those little purple words say write a review. If you leave a review and just let Mike and I know what stood out to you, how did this support you? And that's a powerful way of encouraging us as well as helping the podcast spread and grow. I appreciate you, conscious investor. Thank you for taking time to listen. And remember, cheers to your health, your mindset, and your wealth.